So in this video, we're going to talk about service accommodation. What is service accommodation? When we talk about service accommodation, we're talking about short stay lets. Some of you know as your Airbnb or the other services like booking.com as well. So short stay lets. Why short stay lets? When you compare a short stay let to what you call it, a normal rental. So why as an investor do I currently prefer service accommodation? Not that I don't do any other investments, but why would I go for service accommodation at the moment? So if you compare service accommodation to a standard buy to let, um, so you get a tenant in there. So you buy the house, you stick a tenant in there. Maybe you're earning how much? Maybe 1,000 a month, 1,002, whatever it could be. You could be getting double the cash flow in service accommodation. Why? Because you have tenants that are staying for a short period of time. Let's say 150 one night or 200 pound a night. They could stay for 4 or 5 nights, and then the next one comes in, the next one comes in. You could literally be earning maybe £2,000 a month on a service accommodation compared to your standard buy to let, which is maybe 1,513, or you can get to depending on the type of property you are and how much value the property brings. But I know what a lot of people say, what about the high turnover? What about always having to, I guess, clean the place? You have to get cleaners, you have to constantly look for tenants. All right, but one thing a lot of people don't realize about Airbnb is that you can make it systemized. Airbnb can be systemized. You don't have to do everything. All right, everything on Airbnb can be systemized. What do I mean by systemized? You got stuff like Guestly, which is a system that you can manage the calls. You can manage. So I'll get into detail on some of these things. You can manage the calls. You can manage. You can manage the calls, the hassles of the tenants. Guestly can take care of that. All right, and you don't need to always greet your people that have booked your Airbnb. We've got lock boxes now. You can stick keys in a local shop just in case people get locked out. So there's so many ways and systems you can put in place that don't require you to be there. But I know another question is, say, what about gaps? What if there are no bookings? What if I'm not getting bookings? That's why it's important, number one, to do your research to make sure it's a good area for service accommodation. But one of the things you can do is to rent out the property as an emergency accommodation. Sometimes renting out your Airbnb to emergencies. So what do I mean by emergencies? People maybe who are moving houses and they need somewhere to stay for a short period of time. Maybe someone's house got burned down, someone's house got flooded. As you can put your house out as an emergency accommodation. So maybe that could be 2 to 3 months. Maybe they could be staying at your property, and apart from that as well, you can give your Airbnb to an agency, where the agency will also use your property and let it out to certain people. And then when there's no emergency service, there's no emergency bookings, or the agency are not using the property, that's where you can use Airbnb to fill in the gaps. All right, so you want long stays, you can use your emergency accommodation and you can use an agency. But I understand if you only got one Airbnb, they might not be willing to really work with you because you only got one. Most likely your Airbnb will always be booked out. That's why it's always good to look around to make sure to find out the agencies that work with small people with small portfolios or just one portfolio. That's something I'll get into in my next property. So you realize that Airbnb, you don't have to be there. If you understand the power of systems, then you're able to bridge that gap. Again, working with cleaning companies, showing them how the system works. It's not that hard. Really, it's not that hard. If you work with the cleaning company, working with maybe Airbnb, Guestly, showing that as soon as they check out, as soon as someone checks out, the cleaners go there. So it's just about buying the property, before you buy the property, you want to kind of talk to the cleaners, talk to a cleaning service, find out, I'm buying a local property. How can we work together with my Airbnb? I would recommend, before you buy the property, if you're doing service accommodation, talk to the cleaners, get your head on the ground. Yeah, but honestly, they'll be glad to work with you because they know that if I'm working with for an Airbnb company, most likely I'm it's a job. So if you find a good cleaning service, understand, this is what I need, and I'm pretty sure you could work together, and find a way of remotely organizing the fact that as soon as there's a checkout, the cleaning company is in there as well. Why would you want to work with a cleaning company? Number two, the cleaning company can also become your eyes. They can be the eyes of your property. So you can ask the cleaning company to take pictures of the Airbnb as soon as it's cleaned, just to make sure any complaints that you may get in your property, that the cleaners are taking a picture of your service accommodation, and that no, this was clean, these are the pictures. And again, if anything is broken, anything's out of place, your cleaning company can also tell you that kind of thing, so you don't have to be at the Airbnb all the time. That can become taxing, especially if you're just starting out, because most likely you might have a job, so it might be difficult to be back and forth in that property as well. So really, yes, it might eat a little bit into your profits, but again, you don't want to be answering calls, you don't want to be cleaning carpets, you don't want to be hoovering, or it's unless you want to be in. But most likely, why do it when you can make it systematic? All right, you're not going to save that much. All right, so yeah, I recommend work with the cleaning company, let them take pictures so that you know that this is the condition that you found the Airbnb, nothing was broken, which is very, very important. So again, if you work with dodgy guests, you need to kind of know that your Airbnb was lent to them in time, So I always try to bust the myth that an Airbnb is somehow harder than a buy to let, or because a buy to let, if you look at some of the laws that they've put in it, look, I mean, tenants be trashing houses and you can't exactly kick them out. They're making it harder and harder for tenants to be kicked out of your standard buy to let. So I mean, it's a landlord's nightmare. So if my recommendation, a service accommodation, it's a bit more, the in, the out, and the ways of regulating what goes on in your Airbnb. And I know we'll get into energy caps, we'll get into scams, the below the scams that happen in Airbnb. You don't want people renting out Airbnb for parties. I will get into that in a later video. But one of the things, before you even get into the Airbnb, make sure it's in a good location. Make sure there are airports nearby, hospitals nearby, maybe a motorway or somewhere where it's easy to access. If it's their motorways or it's a place well traveled, you could look out for contractors. Maybe contractors could get you Airbnb, or maybe young doctors who need a place to stay. Okay, you want to really find out what are the kind of people who would stay in this Airbnb. Is it a tourist area? Are there other Airbnbs? Okay, if there's no hotels, no Airbnbs, it's just an isolated area, that might be a red flag. Okay, it might not be, yeah, there's no competition. It's not that you don't have any competition, it's that the area is so far that you're not going to get any bookings. It's a disaster. So make sure you do your due diligence. All right, sometimes check out, even online on Airbnb, check out how people are finishing the Airbnbs. You don't want to have that Airbnb that's finished to a low standard. Make sure you are finishing your Airbnb to a decent standard. Look at the local hotels. Sometimes go to your local hotels, find out what kind of people stay there. You're trying to gauge the kind of graph of how your Airbnb should be finished. All right, you don't want it to be a subpar Airbnb. You don't need to overdo it if it's an area where it's not required. So really do your due diligence when it comes to service accommodation. This is part one, why service accommodation. All right, so yeah, do your due diligence. But service accommodation, honestly, if you want high cash flow, service accommodation is the one for you.